Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. For those of you who are watching live, and also I forgot to share this with my guest speakers, Mary Jane and Emily. For those of you who are watching live, could you please share this broadcast, because we really want to inspire everybody who is part of the Let's Humanize the Workplace movement. So if you stand behind the quote, let's humanize the workplace, then please share it on your LinkedIn timeline, or maybe on your Twitter timeline. So my name is 𝗏𝗂𝗏𝗃, and I am doing a 2 weeks online summit about Let's Humanize the Workplace. And I'm a workplace wellness advocate, helping managers with keeping their team members healthy, happy, and safe. And why am I doing this, right? Because it's so important that we learn to bring the human factor back. And I've been receiving so many messages about people working in places where the human factor isn't that much present. And that's why I decided to have conversations with experts in my network to talk about let's humanize the workplace. And it's also important that humanizing the workplace is also it's also part of the sustainable development goals. And especially from this week on, we all have that international commitment towards 2050 to make the world a better place. And I'm starting that movement from the workplace. So my mission is making the world a better place by starting from the workplace. And if you're watching the show, like I said, please share it. And otherwise, give us some thumbs up. Share some loves or clap for us, because we are really putting our time and effort in this broadcast. So I'll go to the next slide. So sharing is caring, and if you care, please share. And also, please share where you're from, because I'm really curious about how many people are watching. I've received so many messages that people are watching internationally, from the States, from Africa, from Eastern Europe. So please share where you're watching from, so that we can engage with you as well and say hi to you as well. Because it's a LinkedIn broadcast and a Periscope broadcast, I can only bring in the comments from Periscope. I cannot bring in the comments from LinkedIn. So I have to, from time to time, look at my comment section. I have to, from time to time, look at my comment section and see that you're watching. And if you're watching, please say hello. Please share where you're from. And also, if you're watching live, please share if you're #teamlive or #replay. If you're watching the replay, let us know that you're watching the replay, so that I can react to it later on. And please tag me as well. So like I shared before, we're doing this because of the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's very important that employees have a good well-being. But it's also important that they have a decent workplace, and that we treat the employees as human as we can, right? Because that's what we're aiming for. And before I start with introducing the next guest speakers, I want to use this article, which is written by 𝗟𝗲𝗄𝗃, about 5 reasons employees are your company #1 asset. So I'm going to use the term employee turnover. And before I go further with that, I need to explain something about the employee turnover, which is a measurement of the number of people who leave your organization within a certain time period. So in this case, it could be a year. And one of the things that 𝗟𝗲𝗄𝗃 mentioned in her article is, you have to see that employee turnover every time a person or a talented person, let's say every time a talent leaves your organization, it will take at least 6 months to replace a person. That means also a minimum of 6 months, and that's for the job sector the demand isn't high. If that person is working in a sector where the demand is high, for instance, IT or some specialism or consultancy firms, advisory firms, right? The demand is high. So know that you have to do your best to keep the people keep the people at the work and keep them happy in the workplace. So employee turnover is costly, and what's what she's saying about that is employee turnover is costly in terms of valuable resources, but it can also affect the morale in both current employees and clients. Employees may begin to question the quality of the workplace environment as well as their own prospects of employment longevity. When clients see new faces too often, they may lose that personal connection with your staff and naturally may come to wonder why your company cannot retain its employees. All of this can be a remarkably detrimental effect on your day-to-day operations. So if, for instance, the department or if the client has a contact and every 2 months or every year or every half year they are switching, know that it can hurt your brand. Know that it can hurt the future relationship of your client. So please pay that in mind. To prevent this from happening and to think about what you can do to keep that employee happy in the workplace. And then again, I really want to emphasize that when a person that is leaving from, let's say, a job category where the demand isn't high, it takes a minimum of 6 months to replace that person. When the demand is high, it can take up to 2.5 years to replace that person and to win your client's heart back, right? So please put that in mind. And I'm going to introduce my guests. So I'm going to add Mary-Jane Roy to this conversation and going to unmute her. First, I'll introduce her. Mary-Jane Roy is a stress resiliency advisor who's focused upon creating workspaces filled with engaged, healthy, and productive people. She's also my podcast host for the Go to Thrive podcast. So for those of you who want to know more about us, please listen to the podcast. And the next speaker, which I'm going to introduce, is Emily Firth. And Emily, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. And if not, please help me. Emily is a talent brand expert and also an inclusive culture advocate. She uses her branding skills to focus on using storytelling to improve the workplace culture. Emily is passionate about leveraging authentic stories to kickstart change. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, Vivian. Good to be here.
Yes, thanks for having us.
Do you have anything to add on? Yes.
Yeah, Vivian, I was just going to say, before we get started, if I can just explain, I'm in the backwoods of West Virginia, beautiful West Virginia, and it turns out that the internet connection is not as high speed as it was supposed to be. So if we have any problems with the connection, you'll know where it's coming from.
Or just know that you can switch your video off. There is an option that you can switch your video off so that we can still hear you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Okay. So I just shared this article from Forbes, which is recently published. And do you have anything to add on what I just shared about that?
Emily, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I was both being very polite then, weren't we? Look, I think it's really interesting seeing those stats around how long it takes to replace and rehire employees. And I think it's something that employers really need to be aware of. It doesn't take a lot to be flexible and keep a good employee, but obviously the effort to both, rebuild relationships with clients from scratch with new people and also find talent is incredibly time consuming and costs your business money. So I think, there's a little effort on one side and a lot of effort on the other. So it's very pertinent to our discussions. And I think especially when you're talking about highly competitive talent bases, for example, I've been doing a lot of work on tech talent attraction, which is highly competitive. It doesn't take, it's very easy for tech talent to find other opportunities. They are hard to retain, but they're even harder to find.
Thank you for sharing. And Mary-Jane?
I agree with everything that you've said, Emily, that you shared there. I think the biggest concerns that I have is that organizations just don't stop to think about the costs. And it's not just the costs in money and time, but it's knowledge, missed chances for opportunities because the knowledge isn't there any longer. And if they would just put a business case to keeping their employees happy, and upping the ante for workplace pleasure, then I think it would go a long way to keeping people satisfied and wanting to stay with an organization.
And also what I wanted to add is when people leave, because that's the thing that I didn't add in the conversation or when I was reading the article, when people leave, it puts a certain strain on the remaining team members.
Yeah.
It puts a certain pressure on the remaining team members. And especially when you mentioned about the tech is very high demanding. Everything you're designing today is already old, it's already yesterday's news, which is putting an extra stress level on them. And then somebody leaves, right? And it's going to also be, it can hurt the team. It can hurt the team spirit, and it can also make somebody leave, or also make somebody, become stressed or end up with a burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. I was funnily enough, I was about to add exactly the same point. I've been
two minds think alike.
Yeah, no, I've been through this situation recently, actually. I left Booking.com, where I was employed 3 months ago now, and my biggest concern in leaving was leaving a team, because I think, especially in a big organization, you're really, a lot of your pastoral care, a lot of your sort of comfort zone is from the direct manager above you. And especially in a large organization, you don't necessarily have that open dialogue with someone who's 2-3 levels above you. So, that continuity is really important. And I think, especially here in the Netherlands, and I know it's the same in the States, it's a very short window between someone giving their notice and them leaving. So when I was based in the UK, it was a 3-month notice period. So at least you had that time for transition, for, handover, for continuity. Here it's a month. So if you have holiday remaining, you're out the door in a couple of weeks, and I think in the US, the turnaround is even quicker. So really you're leaving a team essentially as well. And that disruption has a huge knock-on effect.
Definitely. I also wanted to say Carolina from Dostal is watching from Brazil. So we have somebody from South America, ladies. So let's start on with the conversation, right? Number one of the things that was mentioned, right? No opportunity for advancement. Mary Jane, can you share something about that? Are you there? I think maybe you need to switch off your video.
No, I was muted.
Oh, okay.
I was muted.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. So the no opportunity for advancement is, I'm sure, one of the important factors. I'm not sure that it's one of the most important ones, but people have to feel that there's room to grow. And if they don't, then it's obviously going to minimize the motivation, decrease the motivation. So I think the opportunity for advancement, people have to see that there is a career path set forward for them. And of course, not to forget that people also own their own careers. They need to have more ownership for their own careers. So taking those steps themselves to ensure that they will move forward is also part of the equation. So it isn't just one-sided, I don't believe.
Yeah, it's a tango that both the employer and the employee needs to take, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
In any case, for what I feel about this, but I think it's an equal responsibility. If they're not given room for advancement, then obviously that's going to kill the motivation, and it'll be not long before someone is saying goodbye.
True. And the next question for Emily, feeling micromanaged.
Oh, I wanted to add something. May I add something
definitely.
on the first point?
Yes, you may. You may.
No,
Yeah.
I agree with everything Mary Jane said. I think it is a two-way street. I think there were 2 points I wanted to add. One was I think advancement is very visible now. There's a lot of social currency in advancement. You are super connected to your peers on platforms like LinkedIn, and you can see that other people are advancing and gaining credibility through that. So I think people even more are hyper aware of the fact that everyone's advancing, or at least seems to be. So I think it's become even more important to people than it used to be. And the other thing I wanted to add was, I think the other important thing is equal opportunity for advancement. So I think a company can talk about advancement opportunities, but if you don't see anyone who looks like you, sounds like you, is of the same race, ethnicity, is an introvert versus an extrovert, you don't see those people at the top, your perception can be that you are not able to advance in an organization, whether that's true or not. Often it is true, unfortunately. So I just wanted to add those 2 points.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I agree.
2 very good points.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And can I add one other thing that as you were talking, Emily, that came to my mind? And that is about that we always think advancement in terms of steps forward, but advancing can also be a lateral move. And I think often we forget that. I've met one woman and she has done nothing but move laterally and stays continually happy in the work that she's doing. So another maybe morsel, food for thought.
Yeah.
It's also the way you fill in your values, right? Because the conversation that I had yesterday is that everybody has different values and different perspectives, and what may seem like for you isn't an advancement could be an advancement for somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you also have to look at individual contributor opportunities versus always managerial opportunities, because you've got a lot of people promoted to managerial roles who actually aren't ready or don't want to be a manager.
Can you say that again, please? Can you just repeat that?
Often people don't want to be a manager. That's how you end up with bad managers, people who want to advance, but an organization doesn't necessarily think laterally, to your point, Mary Jane, and doesn't think about other opportunities that might fit that individual. They're very focused on the next career step is to manage others. And not everyone's cut out for that. Not everyone wants to be cut out for that.
Or maybe support them in their side hustle, right?
Yeah.
Because why not? I see companies in the Netherlands that are being supportive about a side hustle. For instance, there is this one example where somebody wanted to learn to become a yoga instructor. The company then asked the person to give indoor yoga lessons. He did it indoor for a while, and then he started to notice, well, I want to do more with this. And he started to become an entrepreneur himself, but he's still involved with the company and he helps out from time to time to support that. So why not support an employee in their hustle, in their side business?
As long as it's not competing or hurting.
Yes, definitely.
It will only bind that person to you even more as an organization.
Yes, definitely. Okay, let's micromanage like Pinocchio, right?
Yeah.
What do we think about that?
I guess. Yeah, sure, Emily. I saw you looking up to and I thought, okay, maybe I can add something that will give it a direction too. But not only is it I think demotivating to be micromanaged, but when people lose their sense of autonomy, the ability to make decisions for themselves, and that's part of what's taken away when you've got a micromanager. So I think what leaders need to realize is people have to be able to make some of their own decisions. They have to have that flexibility in terms of the work that they're doing.
And it's also a reflection, right? Would you want to be micromanaged yourself? I don't think so.
Well, I think some people do need it. I heard this from someone recently. She is just has a new team, and I said, no one likes to be micromanaged, and she said, well, I have a couple of them on my team. So there are it's not always imposed upon someone, but sometimes it's needed. But being a good leader, being a good manager, I really, guys, I have to say, I don't like the word manager, because again, to me, it's who likes to be managed.
Right.
The word itself, you can manage projects, but managing people just doesn't sound right to me. But okay, it's in our lexicon, and I'm not going to change it with this video, with this interview. Being a good leader is knowing what your people need, and if the one needs to be micromanaged, then you give that, and hopefully can move them along so that they need that less and less. But again, don't do it to those who have the ability to think for themselves and are creative and want to use that creativity in the work that they're doing.
I think for yourselves is a really important point. So I think even if you do want to be micromanaged, you won't learn to think for yourself if you do work in that way, or your manager works in that way with you. I would say that the most important thing I've learned in my career is learning how to fail and clean up mistakes that I've made and take accountability for those mistakes. And being micromanaged does not enable you to do that, which means you're not really learning. If you never have to be accountable for anything and it's always someone else's decision, then you're never actually going to learn about your own ability.
And that's also one thing that you touch on, making mistakes, right? Because we seem to think that we can't make mistakes, or we can't learn from the lessons, the things that went wrong. But then again, when we're not doing that, we're not applying a growth mindset. And without that growth mindset, we wouldn't have the light bulb that Thomas, I forgot his last name, but the guy who Edison designed. It took him about 9,099 times to design the light bulb. I'm not saying that you should allow your employees to make that, the same thing. But then again, why not stretch them? Why not encourage them to learn from their nearlings, as somebody else said, somebody we interviewed said. Yeah.
𝗪𝗂𝗺𝗵.
Yes, definitely.
In one of our 𝗪𝗂𝗺 podcast interviews. That's right,
Yeah.
Vivian.
So the next thing that I'm going to select is a wrong cultural fit. And I was supposed to share a video, but I'm not going to share it because I did it before, but I'll share the link. And I hope the two of you have seen it. It's the video with Pearl, where you have that wooden garn that is working in a male-dominated corporate environment. And is changing herself towards that environment. And then she sees somebody else who looks exactly like her, or like she was before. And then she decided to change back to bring in diversity, but also inclusiveness. And when it comes to a cultural fit, I think people underestimate the culture of an organization.
I think what's interesting about talking about leaving because of culture fit is it's traditionally been a way that employers have selected employees on the basis of culture fit, which is a phrase I hate, by the way. I think culture add is much more relevant, because why do you want to fit specifically into a box versus adding and bringing something new to that culture? But it's traditionally been about the employers selecting employees on the basis of cultural fit. I think it's very interesting, this shift of employees saying I'm leaving because the culture doesn't fit with who I am. And I think that speaks to the increased focus on finding ways to flex an environment to include different perspectives, different backgrounds, because we are all individuals. And, we're talking about humanizing the workplace here. The workplace is employing people, and people are varied and different and interesting and bring unique perspectives. It's not one size fits all. So I don't think it's about having to fit specifically with a culture or a culture fitting specifically with you, but I think it's about being part of a culture that values your uniqueness, and that you can find yourself or your tribe or people that you can relate to within.
Definitely.
And that word values, Emily, for me resonates. It's actually what I thought about when I read The Wrong Cultural Fit. And I wasn't thinking in terms of, and that video, Pearl, I know it, Vivian, but again, that often the values just don't mesh. from the
Match,
individual
yeah.
to the organization, and
Mhm.
there's not a match there. So, and I thought this was more in the line of where I was thinking how people would want to leave because they just, we do. I've designing an app, and we now have a benchmark of over 2,000, and sorry, 40% of the respondents state that they're not working daily to their intrinsic values. Now, I can tell you that's a huge energy drainer. It's a huge source of
Mhm.
stress, and that's the kind of cultural fit that I was thinking of when I read the list, Vivian, you provided for us.
Yeah.
So values, not only being valued, that's so critical, Emily, but do my values match that of the organization?
Well, it was very interesting seeing, I don't know if you saw the Facebook open letter that was written to Mark Zuckerberg after he basically was saying political adverts could run and that he was supporting their freedom of speech. It was really interesting the way those employees phrased the letter. It was basically, you have set out some values for us as an organization. We believe that your behavior from a corporate perspective is at odds with those values that we also hold dear and buy into. And they also speak, there's several times in that letter they say, this is our company. And I found that so interesting, that shift in, this is something that we've bought into. We've bought into what you say we stand for, and we're going to hold you accountable to that.
Yeah, that was really admirable. That
I didn't
that they
see
wrote
that
it.
letter, so
I
if one of
will
you can
share it
send
later
me,
on. Yes, I will
thank
share
you.
it in
Yeah.
the webinar. So regarding the next topic, this one.
Yeah. This is a biggie, guys. And Vivian, in one of the research papers that you found when we were doing a presentation on this topic, 76% of people who don't feel appreciated are going to be looking for a new job.
Yeah.
And so this is probably, and Emily, I'm sure you'd agree, this is probably one of the least costly tools that a leader can implement. It doesn't cost them anything at all except a little bit of energy and some empathy and giving appreciation, showing appreciation, acknowledgement for a job well done. Now, it can't get any easier than this.
I believe that it's true, but what if you're a manager who has like 1,000 people under him? It's hard to, share that feedback or share a certain feedback.
First of all, Vivian, if there's an organization out there that has a manager that's responsible for 1,000 people without layers in between, then something's really wrong, honey. So I would tend to think that usually you'll have somebody, even if it's 1 in 100, that you're going to be reporting directly to. It's that person, but also towards team members. We can also take responsibility ourselves to show each other that appreciation. And I've been in organizations where the only reason people are staying is because of the collegiality, because people are actually appreciative of each other, but not because of the top down and what's happening there. So it's a strong factor, I really believe. I'm
and
passionate
also
about this one.
Regarding what you shared, right? Because we are now touching in people not sharing their the way they feel about their colleagues on a business level. But it can also be that somebody is too direct. We Dutch people, the Dutch, can be very direct. Even though we mean well, it can be harsh from somebody from a different culture. So I also want to touch base on that. Is sometimes we don't know how to deliver feedback.
Absolutely. Erin Mayer writes very well on this, if anyone's looking for some Christmas reading in the culture map, which actually speaks also specifically about Dutch directness. And Dutch are actually, I think, on the extreme of the scale of directness. Yeah.
Do you?
No, they are. You should have a look at the you should have a look at the book. She actually mapped across multiple cultures and talks about communication style and the issues that causes in a global organization where you have different cultures, both from the perspective of being too direct, but also from people being too polite. I mean, the British like to sort of couch everything in some positive language, as do the Americans. You know, it tends to be quite a positive, you know, you're doing great, you just keep it up, just do it more, you know, which actually leads someone from a culture who's used to directness to think they're doing great, but actually they're being asked for improvement. So I think if you work in a global company, you have to be hyper aware of communication styles and differences. But I think there's also something to be said for the directness. I mean, I'm a Brit abroad, so I've been working in the Netherlands for about 6 years now. I appreciate the directness. It's probably made me more open, both to receiving constructive feedback and giving it, which I think is no bad thing, because it's interesting. We started talking instantly about feedback in the context of recognition and positive reinforcement, but actually constructive feedback is just as important. And actually some of the managers I have had most value from are ones who have given me very honest feedback that I didn't want to hear, but actually meant that I realized I was growing and learning, and that I still had a lot to learn, to be honest.
True. As long as it is constructive, then everything should be fine and help them stay, right? I'm going to address maybe two topics before we...
Vivian, can I add one little thing in here, because it's so, I think it's so critical, is as long as if we're being constructively given feedback on the things we're not doing well, but again, it has to be balanced with what we are doing well and recognized. So I love the directness, and even though I'm here in West Virginia for the holidays, I'm also based in the Netherlands, Emily, 26 years now. So what I've recognized is that the Dutch often focus on only the things that are going wrong and forget those things you don't hear about. It's expected that, well, of course they don't hear from me because it's going well, but people do need to hear that.
Absolutely.
Sorry, honey, I just had to jump in there with this.
I also need to share that Stu for 5K from Texas is watching, so we're international now.
Hi, Sue.
So the next one is feeling overworked.
Big issue here in the Netherlands as well, right? And globally. Globally,
definitely. I mean, you're seeing more news articles about people getting stressed, people getting burned out, but I'm seeing less about prevention. What are we giving our people to, or what are you what kind of toolkits are you providing for your people to become more resilient?
Exactly. This is well, you feed into my love.
I wanted to hand it over.
And I think this is something that perhaps a lot of organizations don't realize, is that, okay, we're not taught these skills in school at all,
or at home.
Or at home. I mean, the best coping mechanism we have going into adulthood is a shame and blame game, which we've had since we were about 3 years old, and it doesn't serve us well. But people can learn resiliency skills. They can build that resiliency muscle, and they just need to know how. And so for organizations, stress is never going to go away. There's going to be multiple stressors in our lives, but learning how to deal with it better is something that all of us can do. So yeah, a plea to organizations out there to really start paying attention and providing, and not just the checkbox prerequisite 2-hour workshop, but to really give people a learning opportunity for developing these skills.
It's also a muscle that people
into the
need
organization,
to train, right? Yeah.
Exactly. You don't do that in 1 hour in the gym, do you? You know, so that takes time and repetition, and so yeah.
I've both I really love everything you're saying. I both had a burnout and also managed people who've had burnouts. So I think it's kind of a two-pronged attack on this situation. I think organizations absolutely need to equip individuals to know their trigger points, to say it's okay to not be okay, and to look out for certain triggers like not sleeping because of work, you know, feeling anxious about coming into work, all the things that are not normal and should not be normal and should not be stigmatized, and empowering those people to speak up and feel safe about speaking up. But I also think that managers need training and resources, and to say, you know,
absolutely,
yes, it's your responsibility to look for these signs, but at the same time, we will help you. And here are all the resources, and also the sort of red flags you can put up and where you can go if you're concerned about an employee. And actually that duty of care, you know, it doesn't stop with you entirely. It basically, you are the first point of call to raise the flag, but you're not entirely accountable for looking after, you know, your employees' well-being, because that's too much to ask of an individual manager. And that probably leads to them burning out, to be honest.
Yeah, and also what I want to emphasize is we people, we live longer, therefore we work longer. I started my career being 20, I'm turning 40 next year, and I have like 25 or 27 years to go. And it's important that the longest work-life relationship that we have, or being at the, it has to do with our work. So we are 45 years, we're working maybe as an employee, working elsewhere. It's important to provide your people tools, because if you don't, they'll end up in a burnout, they'll end up stressed, and it will also be attached on your brand, on your name, on your company, because they have a not so positive experience regarding that. So
one of the things I've noticed, and I think this is, I'm also guilty of this, but I've tried to stop as a manager and really be aware of it, is people saying, I'm on holiday, but in an emergency, you know, I'm reachable on da, da, da. I think we have so little vacation and holiday time. That is your time to recharge mentally, you know, use your creative outlets, spend time with the people that are most important to you. And I see this increasing trend of kind of availability, constant availability. And I think as a manager, one of the small things we can do is set an example and say, look, I'm taking my vacation and I expect all of you to do the same. Take this mental rest that you need.
Yeah.
And of course the choice always comes down to the individual, but I think you're right, Emily, in that if the manager is not demonstrating or being the role model and is the one who is working on their vacations, people are going to feel they also have to be available. So
and also regarding
the role model is important.
And also look at the CEO of Tesla, right? When he was sending emails or tweets on the weirdest time that he was supposed to be sleeping, he's supposed to be recharging. But at that time, he was sending tweets and weird tweets. And Arianna Huffington even, you know, sent him a letter saying, you need to go to sleep. Yeah.
And also underrated in the workplace is the importance of sleep.
Definitely. Yeah. I wanted to say thank you, because the time flew, right?
Yeah, it really did.
The time flew. So I couldn't address all the things that I wanted to address, but I'm so happy that you shared, you know, wonderful golden nuggets as I share, because it's important that we need to give organizations tools, but also people and also managers tools. How can we help the people to stay in the company, especially when they're very valuable towards your company, as every employee should be? It's important to also address that and provide tools or provide benefits to help them stay.
Vivian, I thank you for inviting myself, and I'm sure Emily will also be in you. But can I add one thing?
Yes,
and
you can.
I don't know, I didn't discuss this with you ahead of time, but one last tip. We interviewed 𝗔𝗰𝗾𝗶 as part of our Go to Thrive podcast series. And that book, I find, is a Bible for managers, leaders on how to help people stay in the organization. It's called Help Them Grow or Watch Them Go. Highly recommend.
Yeah. Definitely. And also her interview will be on upcoming Sunday. So I'll share the link later on for those of you who want to know more. And Emily, one last word. A last word.
Oh goodness, no pressure. Yes. No, I really enjoyed this conversation. I think we could definitely go for a while. but I would just say that without people, your company is nothing. So, you know, what is there that is more important to spend your time thinking about? And I do feel sad that sometimes these conversations are limited to the HR space. This is about your entire organization. It's about how your organization runs. And I do think that is starting to change. So I would love to see more CEOs and leaders engage with these conversations versus just people in the HR and talent space.
So are you challenging me to talk to CEOs? Are you challenging me?
I'm challenging everyone to do this. I think I'm trying as well in the talent brand space to also talk to leadership and not just talk to HR. And actually, when I take briefs, I say, okay, this can't just be a project that HR runs because it won't stick. Change has to come from the top. So there's a challenge to all of us and everyone listening.
Definitely. So for those of you who are listening, if you know a leader or a CEO who's willing to talk about this topic, let's humanize the workplace, let me know, because Emily wants to talk to him. I think Mary Jane wants to talk to him or her. Let me say that, him or her. So thank you, Emily. I want to close off with the guest speaker for the next time. So please stay and I'll mute you and we'll talk later. I want to close off with the following guest speaker. The guest speaker of upcoming Monday will be Gabrielle Union, and it won't be Gabrielle Union, it will be 𝗂𝗄 Hardy, and we'll be talking about what happened to Gabrielle Union when she was speaking up in the workplace. There are so many important employer branding lessons to be learned, so please stay tuned for upcoming Monday on 3 p.m. Central European Time and 8 a.m. in CST. So it will be New York time, 9 a.m. So till next time. And if you have any questions or please share your story and please share this post. Thank you for watching. Bye.